Welcome back to This Week in Auburn Sports. I'm Plainsman Sports Editor Eric Wallace, joined as always by Plainsman Assistant Sports Editor Kyle Van Feckman. And do we have a big one on the books for this weekend? LSU comes to town, and as always, it's a big matchup when the Bayou Bengals come up to Jordan-Hare.
Definitely.
It's LSU's had the upper hand in the series lately. They've won 7 out of the last 10 matchups. But you never really know, and especially this year, it's kind of a different matchup with Auburn being the favorite.
Yeah, and it's definitely different because this is definitely a revenge game, and especially for the seniors, LSU is the last SEC West team that they have yet to beat. Mm-hmm. So they're going to use that to try to fuel that.
Yeah, and Reese Dismuke's talked a little bit about this week, the senior center. You know, he said in the back of his mind he's always thinking about how LSU is the one team he hasn't beaten.
Yeah.
And that's got to drive Malzahn after last year because they got embarrassed in the first half pretty much.
Definitely.
And another interesting storyline, true freshman quarterback Brandon Harris will get the start for LSU, his first career start in Jordan-Hare in a night game. I mean, that's got to be intimidating for the true freshman.
That's got to be one of the toughest debuts in the SEC, so it'll be interesting to see how he responds to that. And he actually was recruited heavily by Auburn, so Coach Gus Malzahn and offensive coordinator Rhett Lashley, they definitely know his playing style, and that may or may not help them when it comes to defending him. Yeah,
and Gus talked a lot this week about how Harris has an NFL-type arm. That to go with, his mobility that makes him a threat, when plays are breaking down. So it'll be interesting to see, at least from a defensive standpoint, how Auburn attacks Harris because, when you're in your first start, you don't really know what to expect. You don't really know what kind of plays Miles and Cam Cameron are going to come up with for him. So that'll be a challenge, but you'd have to think the advantage is definitely for the Auburn defense in this situation just because, the lack of experience for Harris.
And other than worrying about Brandon Harris, who is extremely mobile, as you were saying, LSU also has 4 running backs that they play, and so far this season they're ranked 3rd in the SEC when it comes to rushing yards. So Auburn's defensive line will definitely have their hands full, and it'll be interesting to see if Auburn will be able to stop yet another heavy rushing attack, as they held Arkansas at only 2 yards in the second half, and they're 5th in the country now. So they're facing a top 20 rushing offense, so it'll be interesting to see how they're able to stop that.
Yeah, I mean, Les Miles, you know him, he loves the stable of running backs. They always got talented guys that throw out there, Terrence McGee. Obviously, Leonard Fournette's getting a lot of the headlines, being the talented freshman that he is. But you made a good point with the Auburn rushing defense. It is vastly improved this year. We saw it in the second half against Arkansas. We saw it in Manhattan against Jake Waters and the Kansas State Wildcats. And then even last week against La Tech, the Bulldogs have a very talented running back in Kenneth Dixon. He's 39 career touchdowns, and Auburn held him in check for most of the game.
Yeah.
So that'll be a crucial matchup, I think, to see if Auburn's defense can still hold its own against an LSU offense that, when I talked to media members from Baton Rouge this week, Chandler Rome, the editor of the student newspaper down there, he mentioned that the offensive line for LSU just hasn't quite gelled yet.
Yeah.
They've had a lot of moving pieces. So if Auburn can take away the run game and force Brandon Harris to beat them through the air, that'll just be a massive, pressure release for the secondary. It'll just make it way easier. But it's not all good news for Auburn. There's been a lot of injuries, especially during the La Tech game. It was an oddly physical game.
Yeah, I think at one point there's 5 starters in the locker room, so it was just an odd game when it comes to injuries. Yeah,
and we saw Da'Keel Williams was able to come back out. Obviously, we saw his one-handed grab, reaching back between 2 defenders. And then also with Montravius Adams having a huge game. But a few other guys, including linebackers Casanova McKenzie, Chris Frost, and then offensive lineman Patrick Miller, have been described by Gus Malzahn as day-to-day throughout the week.
Yeah.
So they're practicing, but we don't really know how much they're going to be able to go in the game on Saturday.
It could be a game-time decision, so I guess we'll see.
Mm-hmm. And we saw a little bit of rotation with Devontae Danzy coming into the offensive line. I believe it was Avery Young who moved to make space with that. But you were mentioning the third-ranked LSU rushing attack.
Yeah.
If Casanova, McKenzie, and Chris Frost are limited, That's going to put a lot of pressure on the backups like Anthony Swain and Trey Williams to step up, and they don't have the most experience.
Yeah, it could be another situation like the Kansas State game where the secondary had to step up, and they definitely did step up, and they responded and played well. But only time will tell if Anthony Swain and Trey Williams, the true freshmen, will be able to fill those voids.
Yep, but it should be another fun one as always. The Auburn faithful always show up in Jordan Hare for LSU, and you can count on Les Miles to come up with something crazy to keep his team in it. You got a prediction, Kyle?
I think it's definitely going to be a very close one, but I think Auburn jumps out to the early lead and keeps the lead the whole game. My prediction is 31-17 Auburn.
I'm going to go something similar. I'm going to go 34-20 Auburn. I think that it's just a bit too much of a task to ask a true freshman quarterback to win on the road in the SEC at night. You know, that's a big question for him.
And I think Nick Marshall's also going to have a big game. People are a little worried because LSU's defense, they've only allowed 137 yards per game, which is good for 7th in the country. So Nick Marshall and Shaquille Williams and Sammy Coates and all those guys, it'll be interesting to see if they're able to respond.
Yep, it'll certainly be a big test. But football's not the only thing going on the Plains this weekend. What else is? What other sports are playing this weekend?
Volleyball's at home again after their match win against USC last night.
It was Georgia.
Georgia. They're playing USC this weekend, so they'll look to get their conference streak going. And women's soccer is also home on Friday against Ole Miss at 7. So stop by and see those games before and after the big LSU game.
Yep, it's a pretty full weekend down here on the Plains. If you're around campus, make sure you pick up a Auburn Plainsman. Got a lot of good stuff in our game day tab. This pretty sweet picture of Shaquille Williams from the La Tech game. And also a very cool profile on Alexa Wishart, who is a freshman here at Auburn who's playing on the club hockey team. So make sure you pick up an Auburn Plainsman. Until next time, this has been This Week in Auburn Sports.